Thank you for joining me in part 2. As I was saying, the appeal to popularity to normalcy is a fallacy in ethics, and it's a common one. This is how many of our habits and behaviors are justified, but normalcy is just a way of social conditioning, which is the process of training individuals to respond to a stimulus that in a way that is acceptable to society. And Martin Luther King summed up the consequences of this very well, that what is right isn't always popular, what is popular isn't always right. If you are so interested, check out a social experiment where this lady offers dog milk to people, and you know what, let me show it to you. You don't have to put it actually.
Milkshake basically what's smooth. That's regular cow's milk.
It's dog's milk.
What? What do you mean that's dog's milk?
Dog milk?
Milk for dogs?
Why you give me, I drink dog milk.
You mean that this is produced by a dog? You should have said that first.
I'm putting dog milk now.
Dog milk.
Instead of cow milk.
Yes.
Shame.
Not very normal, is it? Things that are not normal are often seen as taboo, although there is no need for cow milk any more than there is a need for dog milk. So how do industries accomplish making something like cow's milk or meat normal? Well, how would you sell a carcinogenic product which causes long-term diseases and millions of premature deaths when it is regularly consumed? If you answered hire the Center for Consumer Freedom as your PR person, then you are thinking like a animal agriculturalist, because of the many things that they do, the Center for Consumer Freedom is the firm behind turning a whole generation of Americans into smokers. The CCF provides consultants to nonprofits, hiring their own people into nonprofits to provide counsel, propagate flawed studies, letters to the editor, trade industry articles, as well as access high-level government contacts who serve the industries that CCF represents. Everyone from Tyson Foods to Kraft to KFC. Their clients' interests include keeping minimum wage from rising, keeping Americans drinking soft drinks, drinking alcohol, tobacco, and most importantly, meat, dairy, and eggs at every meal. And what about necessary? Let's see. Appealing to necessity in order to sell animal products can be refuted. My favorite case of this is the breast milk from animals, specifically cows. Drinking cow breast milk is about as necessary for human health as drinking dog milk, and as you saw earlier, literally no one would buy that. So in my paper, I do talk about how nations with the highest consumption of dairy have also the highest rate of osteoporosis. This linear relationship between dairy and osteoporosis is also outlined in the largest dietary study on Earth, called the China Study. Dairy causes so many problems because it is only necessary for calves. So in the breast milk of a mother, there is fat, cholesterol, cortisol, and colostrum, which gives the colostrum is what gives a mammal their immune system, their immunity, and that kind of thing. Calves need to achieve 1,000 pounds before they are 2 years old, and therefore there's so much more fat, so much more cholesterol, cortisol, and colostrum that when humans drink it, let's see. The National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases identifies that humans, when drinking animal breast milk, experience painful, prolonged side effects like gas, diarrhea, bloating, sometimes vomiting, and 3/4 of humans are lactose intolerant, and drinking cow's milk causes avoidable health problems. So, is dairy truly necessary? This is what consumers find themselves asking now. And the meat, dairy, and egg industry, the dairy industry, has been forced to respond to this. And remarkably, marketers moved from denial of these health problems to acknowledgement, but in a very misleading way. Take this ad for Lactaid, for example. It dupes consumers into singling out lactose as the issue with drinking cow's breast milk, as opposed to the act of drinking bovine breast milk itself. Check it out.
That milk in your coffee was messing with you, wasn't it? Yeah, it happens to more people than you think. Try Lactaid. It's real milk without that annoying lactose. Good, right? Yeah. Lactaid. It's the milk that doesn't mess with you.
So they acknowledge that dairy milk causes health problems, but rather than advising consumers to stop drinking it and go vegan, here's some breast milk without lactose in it. They kind of use another fallacy called a red herring, where they single out, they scapegoat one area of the breast milk as a problem as opposed to the whole thing. And then finally, necessary and natural, like I was saying earlier, these two are supposed to comprise health. Because to be healthy, we think of ourselves as embodying the picture of human health. So in this section, I'll be taking a look at biology that will later explain the false advertisement, the very last false advertisement that we will look at in my presentation. So let me start off by introducing you to human evolution in illustration form. So we've all seen this one up top, this linear form of evolution. Like this one becomes this one becomes this one. Well, this is not a correct representation of evolution. Human evolution actually resembles a tree. Down here are our ancestors who may have held on to, who probably do not resemble the hominids that we are today. These are like hominid beings with different characteristics that didn't survive higher up the tree where we are right here. Characteristics like tails, and maybe they weren't bipedal and things like that. So in order to get a good idea of what a natural human being is, we can only assume our nature by the characteristics that we have today. So I'm going to start from the outside in, and I'm going to prove that human nature is incompatible with eating animals because humans are herbivores. And before I lose you, just take a look at the key biological characters that we possess today, such as the sight of animals being killed, or the sight of animals at all. Animals don't look to us like food. In fact, animal products are made to look not like animals. A sausage doesn't look anything like a pig, because in this context, these are all photos, these are all reactions of people who are being shown on the street by an animal rights group called Anonymous for the Voiceless right here. And these Guy Fawkes masks, they're being shown what happens to animals in abattoirs where they're killed. And the sight of death of animals, it doesn't make our tummies rumble, it doesn't make us salivate, it doesn't inspire feelings of hunger. It inspires despair and disgust and sadness and things like that. And then we go on to the sense of smell, which is a bit more concrete because smell is quite the survival mechanism. So things smell bad to us because our body is trying to communicate with us and say that this is not good for you. Take this roadkill, for example. If you put this roadkill in your body, it will harm you because it's got all kinds of metastatizing feces, blood, bacteria, and it's rotting. And rot is dangerous in our bodies because we are not natural carnivores like a vulture who has the anatomy to digest roadkill just the way it is. So roadkill smells very bad to human beings, but smells very good to a vulture. Good things that smell good to us, like strawberries, smell good because they smell sweet, because sweetness is how our brain codifies vitamins and things like that. And then we're working our way in to the digestive system anatomy. So we'll start with teeth. Things like mastication is something that herbivores do and not carnivores. Carnivores rip and tear their food and swallow it whole, and they have very short intestines so that their body can process that rotting corpse and poop it out as quickly as possible. Whereas humans, herbivores over here, masticate their food. They chew their food for a few minutes, they chew it down to a pulp, and then it goes through a long 25-foot lower intestine, because plant matter is so dense with nutrients that it takes a long time for it to reabsorb into the system, and it's very safe to keep in the body. So just the longer length of the intestines can tell you which animal's a herbivore and which one isn't. The presence of a cecum is hotly debated whether or not our cecum resembles that of a omnivore or herbivore, but we do have a cecum which breaks down cellulose, the cell wall of plants. Anyway, the point of all this biology is to prove that it is untrue whenever an advertisement claims that a product made from animals is healthy and natural for human consumption, while something made from plants is not. Any time that advertisements claim that eating plants is unhealthy, that is untrue, because eating plants is very natural and healthy for human beings. And the way that they go about this often is by attacking the ingredients of plant-based meats, for example. But take a look down here. This ad was provided to us by our friends at the Center for Consumer Freedom. And then finally, so given these examples, find where I left off. Given these examples, can all of this evidence of false claims in meat, dairy, and eggs result in government regulation of these claims, and censorship, and banning of advertising these products? Well, in this section, I will talk about this very last section of my project. I will talk about advertising's evolution as unprotected under the Constitution to being protected by the Constitution. And then I'll introduce you to the consumer's constitutional right to information, and then the legal climate of animal agriculturalists and animal rights activists, and finally talk to you about what an ag-gag law is, and I'll finish off by determining whether or not animal products constitutes false advertising, constitutes unconstitutionality, and illegality. Okay, so in the very beginning, the Freedom of Speech Clause of the First Amendment was never intended to protect commercial messages, because ads that just purely sold products did not affect the political climate, they did not contribute to the exchange of ideas, enhance individual self-expression, so it only amounted to selling products, and the Constitution was not very concerned with that. It wasn't until the ideation of idea advertising. Oh, where am I on my notes? So idea advertising may not always be made for selling products, but potentially contain things like libel, which are not constitutional, which do require some legal consideration. Think about a smear campaign against a celebrity or somebody else like that, or a business rival, that kind of thing. So it wasn't until the 1970s that commercial speech had some kind of legal consideration under the Constitution. For example, in 1973, a newspaper in Virginia that advertised abortion was actually upheld as constitutional, and this is post Roe v. Wade, by the way, because it provided a clear public interest to the people's right to abortion information. So, information that provides political sensitivity, it takes